Welcome to Lesson 5 in Biblical Hebrew. We're going to study today. The lesson will be involved the definite article and the conjunction verb. This is a fairly large lesson, so we're going to break it into two series here. One beginning with the definite article and then going into the conjunction in the final series, the second um, session here on chapter 5. In English, a noun can be either definite or indefinite. We recognize that we can say a book or the book. The book, THE, is telling you that it's definite versus a, it's indefinite. And so, much like in English, the Hebrew has a definite article. It doesn't have a indefinite article like we do in English. Um, and so we basically we'll get into the definite article. Whenever you don't see a definite article in Hebrew with the noun, you are to treat it as a indefinite article unless it's a proper noun such as Egypt or Israel or something like that, or a possessive pronoun. Then you would treat it as a definite even though it didn't have a definite article. Now, in this chapter, we're going to concentrate on nouns with the Hebrew definite article, and in general, the Hebrew definite article functions much like the English definite article, as I just mentioned. Um, Basically, Hebrew is all about looking for signs. And what we want to do is we're memorizing to recognize. That's the whole purpose of Hebrew, is you look for the signs to tell you what part of speech it is, and if it's a verb, if it's a noun, whatever. And so the Hebrew word for king or is melech, as we've mentioned before. That's a second noun. And it appears that the noun is indefinite if it's just melech. But in Hebrew, a noun is made definite by prefixing the definite article to the noun, which consists of the hey and the patak, plus a dagesh forte in the first consonant of the noun. So here you have highlighted in red, you have the letter hey, you have the vowel patak, which is a short vowel, and then you have the dagesh forte here. And here, that's a double dagesh, as we've learned in the previous lessons. It is a non-Megakefat letter, so it has to be a dagesh forte. So you can see these three things are the sign: the hey, the patak, and the dot, the dagesh forte in the mem here. Thus, the king becomes the king attached here. So you can see how easy it is to identify the definite article in the following examples here. And let's go down here to the following examples. To the left here we have the Navi, a prophet. But when we put a definite article into it, all we do is add the hey, the patak, and the dagesh in the noon. And it becomes Han Navi. Han Navi in there. Okay? So let's go to elder down here. Zakain, an elder here is indefinite, but when we want to make it definite, we add the hey, the patak, and the dagesh to the zayin. It becomes haz zakain. Haz zakain. So if you wanted to phonetically put that in, that would be an H, an A, and a Z. One syllable, another Z, a long A, and then a Q, a long E, and a N. So, you can break that down into the syllables here. The next one we have is Zeus, a horse, but we want to make it the horse. We want to put the definite article on the hey, the patak, and the doubling of the samic here. Same thing with a judge, the shofet. We add the hey, the patak, and the doubling of the first consonantal root right there of the word. And that's pretty simple here on that section. So let's go into the article and initial Begagafat letters here. Now the article and initial Begagafat letters, you know that the words with the initial Begagafat letter, which is a bait, a gimel, a dalet, a kaf, a pei, and a tav, will appear with the dagesh lene, as in bayit, and in derek for road, and in gibor for warrior. Now, when the definite article is added to these words, the dagesh lene is replaced, it drops out, and it's taken over by the dagesh forte. And here's some following examples showing that nothing really changes in the spelling, except for what was one was a dagesh lene is now dagesh forte. You have bayit for house. You have habayit, habbayit. You have two B's. Remember, the dagesh forte produces two B's and a hard sound. So that's, and phonetically you would write that out as two B's. And so you have the hey, the patak, and the doubling of the first letter of the noun. Same thing with Derek. The lane A drops out here and it's replaced by the dagesh forte, the doubling, dagesh. Same thing with Gibor, Hag, Gibor. Here, same exact same thing. What's going on here? So now, when we have the article attached to initial guttural consonants, there is a difference that changes here, and this is what we need to learn. The rules we need to learn for when we attach um, try to put a dagesh in a guttural or a noun. Its first letter is a guttural, and we remember that the gutturals are aleph, ayin, hey, and chet, and resh, sometimes resh. And let's go through these rules here. And you know that the resh can't take a dagesh forte. They all rejected dageshes and the dagesh fortes and stuff, so they reject it. Can't take a lane A nor a forte dagesh. So what happens? We have one rule. It's called compensatory lengthening with the initial gutturals of aleph, resh, and ayin. The rejection of the dagesh forte results in what is called a compensatory lengthening. What this means is that the patak, which is a short A vowel, actually lengthens to a comets, which is a long A, as in the hay and the comets. So in this way, the definite article compensates for the loss of the dagesh forte by lengthening its vowel from a short A, which is a patak, to a long A, which is the comets. That's the reason why we call it compensatory lengthening. The definite article is still easy to identify as the following examples illustrate here. Let's go look at these illustrations here. We have ish, but if we want to put a definite article onto ish, aleph is a guttural. We put the hey here, and normally we put the patak, and the dagesh forte, but aleph reject the geshes, so it can the patak lengthens to comets. Same thing with Isha. The patak lengthens to comets, and the aleph rejects the dagesh. Rosh, we have here, Rosh is a head, and we'll say the head. Again, we have the same thing. What would normally be a dagesh in the resh is rejected because of guttural. The patak lengthens to a comets. Ear, a city. Ha-ear, the city. So we basically have just what they call compensatory lengthening. Now, rule number 2, when a hey or a chet is the first consonant of a noun, the rejection of the dagesh forte results in what is called virtual doubling. And let's go here to show you what virtual doubling is. Virtual doubling is the rejection when it rejects the dagesh forte without lengthening the patak to a comma. It doesn't lengthen, it remains the same. So, for example, the Hebrew word for palace is hekal or hechal. With the addition of the definite article, it is rendered ha-hechal, ha-hechal, the palace. So, what happens here is you have the hey and the patak as normal, but when you try to double the hey here, it rejects, of course, gutturals reject the doubling of the dagesh, and thus it just remains the same. The dagesh drops out, and you just have the patak under the hay. Another example is choma, wall. It's rendered as ha choma, ha choma in here. Notice how the hay and the chet reject the dagesh forte, but the patak vowel does not lengthen. So that's called virtual doubling. That happens with hays and chets right here. Now, when we have what they call irregular segol vowels, and before the nouns that begin with an unaccented ayin with a comets, hay with a comets, or chet with a comets, when it's in an unaccented syllable, the definite article appears with a segol and without the dogish forte. So let's look at an example here. We have chakam, which is wise man. When we want to say the wise man, we put a hay like we would normally do, but instead of a hay, we put a segol here because this chet with a comets in an unaccented syllable is the rule right here. So the only ones you have to really concern yourself over is whenever you see a noun with a chet and a comets, or an ayin with a comets, or a hay with a comets, then you're going to have the definite article here with a segol. Okay? Alright, let's go down to the article with the initial yod with a shava or mem with a shava, simple shava. When we have, with few exceptions, words that begin with yod with a shava or mem with shava give up the dogish forte that is associated with the definite article. So whenever we have yeladim for boys, masculine boys, here yeladim, it becomes ha yeladim. Ha yeladim. You notice that the dogish forte has dropped out of the yod here. What would normally be a dogish forte there, it drops out. And the same thing with mega maragalim for spies. When we put a definite article on this noun, what you would normally have, normally would say ham meragalim, but what happens here is the dagesh forte drops out, so it's ham ragalim. So whenever you see a noun beginning with a yod and a vowel of a shava, or a mem with a shava, the dagesh drops out normally in here. And so in both instances, the dagesh forte is given up, but the patak vowel, the short a, remains, and it's not lengthened. So this is similar to what we call virtual doubling with the gutturals mentioned above. Note that the shava under the first consonant of the noun remains a vocal shava by analogy to the basic form of the article with the dagesh forte. So it does remain vocal. We've learned that normally when a patak is there, this is a non-vocal, but because it is a definite article is attached to it, it like doubles it. It allows that shava to be vocal here. So even though the dagesh is not there, there's not the doubling there, we would still pronunciate this as vocal here, as ha me rag galim. Ha me rag galim in there. So we still pronunciate that shava, even though there's no more doubling in that mem there. And that's really basically the only example when you have that to happen here. Normally, if you see something like that, anything else on it, then basically just realize that that's a doubling dagesh that's dropped out. Now, you know that Hebrew now is rendered definite by the prefixing of the definite article, hey, plus and patak plus the dagesh 14 in the first consonant noun. You also know that there's some minor variations to the standard construction, especially with initial guttural consonants. There are a few nouns that deviate from these rules, but none of these changes should concern you too much. It's good to be aware of exceptions and variations to the standard pattern, but it's more important to you to concentrate on what does not change. The presence of the hay never changes. That is, no matter what the vowels or the dagesh forte do or do not do, the hay is unaltered. Second, the stem of the noun will rarely change with the addition of the definite article. Therefore, if you know your vocabulary and that you understand that the prefix hay indicates the definite article, you will rarely have any trouble in identifying nouns with the definite article in the Hebrew. Okay, let's go to this group here. In a small group of words, the prefixing of the definite article occasion basically brings a slight change in the vocalization of the noun. So in the following examples, note that the vowel under the first consonant of each noun has changed to a commence. So for example, when we have eretz, we normally find eretz with a sagol. But when we put a definite article on eretz, we say ha-aretz. What happens here is the vowel of the sagol changes to a commence. And of course, we have the lengthening of the patak to the commence because of the aleph rejecting the dagesh forte. We have am. When you put the definite article on it, that patak lengthens to a kametz also. Of course, the doubling and the rejection of the doubling in the ayin lengthens the comments up under the hay. So we normally, under that rule, it doesn't change that rule. It's just the vowel in the noun changes. Gan for Hagan. Pronunciation really doesn't change either, since we don't make a distinction between the comments and the patak anymore, but there was a distinction in ancient Hebrew. We have har and we have hahar. So you just see this, you just see that they lengthen on here. There's on certain nouns. On here you do have vocalization change. Then you have aron for ark. You have ha-aron. It comments that hatef patak changes to a comments. Okay, so basically we're going to end here our series with the definite article. Go back and just study the first part, look at the rules, and if you want to, you can go ahead and do some of the homework on the definite article, but don't do any work on the conjunction. We will get back to that in the next session, okay?